The darkness of space stretched endlessly in all directions. Inside the small salvage ship called Wanderer's Hope, Tay wiped the sweat from his forehead and stared at the screen in front of him. The scanner had picked up something unusual. A ship, a big one, and it was just floating there, dead in the water. "Hana, you seeing this?" Tay called out to the pilot. Hana leaned over from her seat and squinted at the display. Her short black hair fell across her eyes as she studied the readings. "That's a Keltharian vessel. What's it doing out here?" The Keltharians were not friends to humanity. They ruled a massive empire that stretched across dozens of star systems. They were powerful, cruel, and they kept slaves. Most humans tried to avoid them whenever possible. "Looks like it's been damaged," Tay said. "No power signatures. No life support running. Could be valuable salvage." Captain Day walked into the room, his boots making soft thuds on the metal floor. He was older than the rest of them, with gray starting to show in his hair. "We're not going near that thing," he said firmly. "Captain, it could be worth millions," Tay argued. "Keltharian technology is dangerous," Day interrupted. "We're not equipped to handle their security systems. One wrong move and we could all end up dead." Hana turned in her chair. "The ship looks completely dead, Captain. No energy readings at all. It might have been attacked by pirates or caught in that solar storm last week." Day crossed his arms and thought for a moment. The crew had been having a rough month. They needed money for repairs and supplies. Finally, he sighed. "Fine, but we're careful. Any sign of trouble and we leave immediately." "Understood." Everyone nodded. 20 minutes later, Tay floated through the airlock connecting their ship to the Keltharian vessel. His helmet light cut through the darkness inside. Behind him came Hana and Quan, their security officer. The three of them moved slowly through the corridors. Everything was wrong. The walls were scorched in places. Bodies of Keltharian soldiers floated in the zero gravity, frozen and dead. Whatever had happened here had been violent. This wasn't just a storm, Quan said quietly, his hand resting on his weapon. This was a battle. They moved deeper into the ship, checking each room. Most were empty or destroyed. Then they reached the cargo hold. Tay pushed open the heavy door and swept his light across the massive space. Cages, dozens of them. All empty now, their doors hanging open. "Slave ship," Hana whispered, disgust clear in her voice. Tay moved forward, examining the cages. Some still had chains attached to the walls. His stomach turned. Then he heard something. A soft sound like breathing. "Hello?" he called out. The breathing got louder, faster, panicked. "Over here!" Hana shouted. She was at the far end of the cargo hold, kneeling next to a figure huddled in the corner. Tay and Quan rushed over. Their lights revealed a female alien, not Keltharian. She was smaller, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. Her clothes were torn and dirty. But what caught Tay's attention was the collar around her neck. It was made of dark metal and glowed with a faint red light. The alien female looked up at them, terror in her eyes. She tried to speak, but her voice was weak. She switched to Broken Standard, the common language used across the galaxy. "Please," she gasped, her hand reaching toward them. "Please, remove this collar, it's killing me." Tay knelt down beside her. Up close, he could see that she was shaking. Her skin had an unhealthy gray tint to it. The collar pulsed with that red light, faster now, like a heartbeat. "Hana, get Yuna down here right now," Tay ordered. "Tell her to bring the medical scanner." Hana was already running back toward their ship. Tay looked at the alien female. "Can you understand me?" She nodded weakly. "We're going to help you. What's your name?" "Litre," she managed to say. "Valori." "I am Valori." Tay had heard of the Valori. They were a peaceful species from the inner systems. They had empathic abilities, able to feel the emotions of others. The Keltharians had conquered their world years ago. "How long have you been wearing this collar?" he asked gently. 12 years, Litre whispered. "But different now. Broken. Killing me slow." Quan scanned the area around them. "Tay, we need to move fast. I'm picking up a signal. That collar is transmitting something. Transmitting what?" "Our location." Tay felt his blood run cold. If the collar was sending out a signal, other Keltharian ships would come looking for their lost property. They would come looking for Litre. Yuna arrived, running with her medical kit bouncing against her hip. She was their doctor, small and quick, with steady hands that had saved their lives more than once. She immediately pulled out her scanner and ran it over Litre. Her face went pale as she read the results. "This is bad," Yuna said quietly. "Really bad. The collar is releasing some kind of toxin into her nervous system. It's breaking down her neural pathways. If we don't remove it soon, how soon? Tay asked. 48 hours, maybe less. Tay stood up and looked at the collar more carefully. There were no seams, no visible locks or release mechanisms. The metal seemed to flow seamlessly around Liray's neck. He pulled out his own scanner and examined it. The readings made no sense. The technology was far beyond anything human engineers had created. Layers upon layers of systems, all interconnected. And underneath it all, he could see the failsafes. Dozens of them. Can we cut it off? Quan suggested. No, Yuna said immediately. Look at these readings. If we try to force it open, it will kill her instantly. The collar will burn through her nervous system in seconds. Liray looked up at them with desperate eyes. Please, she said again. Please help me. I do not want to die here. Not after coming so close to freedom. Tay felt something twist in his chest. He had seen a lot of terrible things in his years of salvage work. But there was something about this moment, about this person begging for help, that made him unable to walk away. We'll help you, he said firmly. I don't know how yet, but we will. Captain Day's voice crackled through their communicators. Team, what's your status? I'm detecting unusual energy readings from that ship. Captain, we found a survivor, Tay replied. She needs immediate medical attention. We're bringing her aboard. There was a pause. Understood. But make it quick. I don't like staying attached to this wreck. Quan and Tay carefully lifted Liray between them. She was lighter than she looked, her body weak from years of captivity and the slow poison of the collar. They moved as quickly as they dared back through the dark corridors of the Keltharian ship. Behind them, the empty cages stood like silent witnesses to countless horrors, and somewhere in the vast darkness of space, ships were already turning toward the signal, coming to reclaim what they believed was theirs. The clock was ticking. Liray lay on the medical bed, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. The red light from her collar painted the walls of the medical bay in an eerie glow. Yuna worked around her, checking vitals and running test after test. The rest of the crew gathered in the common area just outside. Through the window they could see Liray and Yuna. Nobody spoke for a while. Finally, Captain Day broke the silence. Tell me everything. Tay explained what they had found. The destroyed slave ship, the empty cages, the collar that was slowly killing Liray, the signal that was broadcasting their position to anyone listening. Day rubbed his face with both hands. We should have left when we had the chance. She would have died, Hana said quietly. And now we might all die, Day replied. But his voice was not angry, just tired. All right. We already made our choice. Now we deal with it. Nari, get in here. Nari was their specialist in alien technology. She was young, barely 25, but she knew more about xenotech than anyone else Tay had ever met. She entered the common area carrying a tablet covered in notes and diagrams. I've been analyzing the scans of the collar, Nari said without greeting. It's Keltharian slave technology. Model K7, if I'm reading this right. They use these to control conquered populations. She pulled up a holographic image of the collar. The 3D model rotated slowly in the air between them. The collar monitors vital signs, tracks location, and can release various substances into the wearer's bloodstream. Sedatives, pain inducers, or in this case, a slow-acting neurotoxin. Why would they design it to kill slowly? Quan asked. Punishment, Nari said flatly. If a slave escapes or the collar is damaged, it begins the killing process. The slave has time to reconsider, to return and beg for mercy. It's psychological torture. Tay felt sick. How do we remove it? Nari zoomed in on a section of the collar. That's the problem. See these connection points? The collar requires a biometric key to unlock. Specifically, it needs the DNA signature and neural pattern of the registered owner. The Keltharian who owned her, Hana said. Exactly. Without that key, the collar won't open. And if we try to force it... Nari made a gesture like an explosion. The failsafe's trigger. Instant death. What about cutting the power? Quan suggested. If we could drain the collar's energy source, already thought of that. Nari interrupted. The collar has 3 separate power systems. If one fails, the others take over. And if all 3 fail simultaneously, the collar automatically triggers the kill switch. The engineers who designed this thought of everything. Tay stared at the hologram. There has to be a way. In theory, yes. If we had Keltharian engineering tools, access to their technical databases, and about 3 months of time to carefully study this specific collar model. Nari shook her head. We have none of those things. And we have less than 48 hours. The medical bay door opened. Una stepped out, pulling off her gloves. Her face was grim. How is she? Day asked. Alive, for now. Una sat down heavily. The toxin is attacking her nervous system. I've given her something to slow the process, but it's only buying us a few hours at best. Her body is starting to shut down. Did she say anything? Tay asked. She's been drifting in and out of consciousness, but when she was awake, she told me her story. Una looked at each of them. Her name is Lyrae. She was a teacher on her homeworld before the Keltharians came. They invaded 12 years ago. She was captured along with thousands of others. Una's voice became quieter. The Valori have empathic abilities. They can sense emotions, detect lies. The Keltharians use them as living lie detectors. Lyrae was sold to a high-ranking military officer. She spent 12 years reading the emotions of prisoners during interrogations. Nobody knew what to say. 3 days ago, Una continued, the ship she was on was attacked. She doesn't know by who. Maybe rebels, maybe pirates. The ship was destroyed. Most of the crew died. Lyrae escaped from her cage during the chaos. But the collar was damaged in the attack. Instead of killing her instantly, it began this slow process. 3 days, Hannah said. She's been alone on that dead ship for 3 days knowing she was dying. Tay stood up and walked to the window. He looked at Lyrae lying on the medical bed. Even unconscious, her face showed pain. We're not letting her die, he said. Tay started. No. Tay turned to face them. I know what you're going to say, Captain. It's impossible. The technology is too advanced. We don't have the tools or the knowledge, but I'm not accepting that. There has to be something we can do. Like what? Nari asked. I've looked at this from every angle. The Keltharians designed these collars to be impossible to remove without their permission. That was the whole point. Then we don't remove it the way they intended, Tay said. We find another way. Quan stood up from where he had been sitting. I hate to interrupt, but we have a more immediate problem. The collar's signal is getting stronger. I've been monitoring it. 3 Keltharian warships have changed course. They're heading this way. How long do we have? Day asked. At their current speed, about 30 hours. Day closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them, he looked at Tay. You really think we can do this? I don't know, Tay admitted. But I know we have to try. The captain was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right. Hannah, plot us a course away from here. Take us somewhere with a lot of radiation interference. Maybe we can hide from their scanners for a while. Yes, Captain. Nari, keep studying that collar. If there's any weakness, any flaw in the design, find it. On it. Una, keep Lyrae alive. Do whatever you have to do. I will. Day looked at Tay. And you're our best engineer. If anyone can figure out how to crack this thing, it's you. But Tay, listen to me. If we can't find a way, if the Keltharians get too close, we might have to make a hard choice. Tay knew what he meant. They might have to abandon Lyrae to save themselves. He wanted to argue, to say that would never happen. But he just nodded. The crew dispersed to their tasks. Tay returned to the medical bay and sat beside Lyrae's bed. Up close, he could see details he had missed before. The scars on her arms from years of restraints. The way her hands trembled even in sleep. The defeated slump of her shoulders. She had survived 12 years as a slave, 3 days alone on a dying ship, and now she was here with a group of strangers trying to do the impossible. Her eyes flickered open. For a moment, she looked confused. Then she saw Tay and tried to speak. Rest, Tay said gently. Save your strength. We'll try. Her voice was barely a whisper. To free me? Yes, Tay promised. We will try. A single tear ran down Lyrae's cheek. Thank you, she breathed. Thank you for seeing me as a person, not just property. She closed her eyes again, exhausted. But Tay thought he saw something in her face that had not been there before. Hope. He stood up and walked to his workshop. He pulled up every scan they had of the collar, every piece of data Nari had collected. He studied the schematics until his eyes hurt. Somewhere in all this information there had to be an answer. The Keltharians were advanced, but they were not gods. They made mistakes. They had weaknesses, he just had to find them. The clock kept ticking. 24 hours remaining. Tay had not slept. His eyes were red and his hands shook slightly from too much caffeine. But he had an idea. Maybe a crazy idea. Maybe an idea that would get them all killed. But it was something. He called everyone to the common area. When they gathered, he could see they all looked as tired as he felt. Hana had dark circles under her eyes. Nari's hair was a mess. Even Captain Day looked worn down. "I think I have a way," Tay said. Everyone leaned forward. "But first I need to explain something." He pulled up a video on the main screen. It showed human engineers working on a broken alien machine. This was recorded 50 years ago on Mars colony. A Centauri mining drill had broken down. The Centauri engineers said it would take 6 months to repair with proper parts. But the human mechanics fixed it in 3 days. "I remember this," Day said. "They used spare parts from a water filtration system and an old shuttle engine." "Exactly," Tay pointed at the screen. "The Centauri were smarter than us. Their technology was better. But they could only fix things the proper way. Humans, we improvise. We make things work even when they shouldn't." Nari frowned. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we can't beat the Kiltharian collar by understanding it completely. We're not smart enough and we don't have time. But we don't need to understand it. We just need to break it in a way that doesn't kill Lyrae." "That's impossible," Nari said. "I told you the failsafes are designed to trigger if someone tries to unlock the collar incorrectly. Or if someone tries to cut through it. Or if the power fails." Tay brought up his own diagrams. "But what if we do all of those things at exactly the same moment?" Everyone stared at him. "Think about it," Tay continued. "The collar has systems to protect against any single attack. But what if we hit it with multiple different methods at once? The collar's computer will try to respond to all the threats simultaneously. It might get confused. It might hesitate for just a fraction of a second. And in that fraction of a second we remove the collar," Hana said slowly. "That's insane," Quan said. But he was smiling slightly. "Which means it might actually work." Yuna held up her hand. "Wait, even if the collar hesitates, the toxin is already in Lyrae's system. Her nervous system is damaged. Removing the collar won't fix that." "I know," Tay said. "That's where you come in. We need you to protect her nervous system during the procedure." "Can you do that?" Yuna thought for a moment. "Maybe. We have medical nanites on board. Tiny machines that can enter the bloodstream and repair damage. I could inject them into Lyrae before we remove the collar. They could form a protective barrier around her neural pathways." "Would that be enough?" Dee asked. "I don't know," Yuna admitted. "But it's better than nothing." Tay pointed to Nari. "We need an electromagnetic pulse. Something strong enough to disrupt the collar's power for just a moment, but precise enough that it doesn't kill Lyrae." Nari pulled out her tablet and started making calculations. "I can build something, but I'll need at least 12 hours. "You have 10, Day said. "Because Hana, you're going to fly us into that pulsar we passed an hour ago." Hana's eyes went wide. "Captain, that's... The radiation from the pulsar will hide us from the Kiltharian scanners," Day explained. "It will also disrupt the collar's transmission. But more importantly, the electromagnetic interference from the pulsar will give Nari's device extra power. It will also make flying very difficult," Hana said. "The radiation plays havoc with navigation systems. Can you do it?" Hana grinned. "Of course I can do it. I just wanted to make sure you knew how crazy this plan is." Tay looked at each of them. "So here's what we're going to do. Yuna will inject the nanites into Lyrae. Nari will build the EMP device. Hana will pilot us into position near the pulsar, and at exactly the right moment I'll use a plasma cutter on the collar. Everything has to happen within 0.003 of a second of each other. If we're off by even a little bit," he didn't need to finish. They all knew what would happen. "This is completely insane," Nari said. "The timing has to be perfect. The EMP has to be exactly the right strength. The nanites have to work. The pulsar radiation has to provide enough interference. And Tay has to cut through alien metal he's never worked with before." She paused. "But it's the only plan we have." "Then we better get started," Day said. The next hours were chaos. Nari worked in engineering, building her EMP device from spare parts and salvaged alien components. Yuna programmed the medical nanites, teaching the tiny machines to recognize and protect Valori neural tissue. Hana ran simulations of the pulsar approach, plotting the exact trajectory they would need. Ty prepared the plasma cutter, adjusting its settings again and again. He practiced on pieces of similar metal, trying to get a feel for exactly how long each cut would take. Too slow and the collar would kill Liray. Too fast and he might cut her. Liray drifted in and out of consciousness. During her waking moments, Yuna explained what they were going to try. Liray listened with wide eyes. "You would risk your lives for me?" she asked weakly. "You do not even know me." "That doesn't matter," Yuna said simply. "You need help." "We can help." "That's enough." Liray closed her eyes and more tears fell. "My people have a saying. The measure of a soul is found in its choices when no one is watching. You are good people." Hours passed. Nari finished the EMP device, a strange collection of wires and crystals that hummed with energy. Yuna completed the nanite programming and loaded them into an injector. Hana finished her calculations and began piloting the ship toward the pulsar. They ran practice drills. Tay would count down, and everyone would perform their part of the plan. But the timing was never quite right. Sometimes Nari fired the EMP too early. Sometimes Yuna's readout showed the nanites were not in position. Sometimes Tay's cut was too slow. After the 8th failed practice run, Quan slammed his hand on the table. "This isn't working. We're never going to get the timing perfect." "We have to," Tay insisted. "The math doesn't lie," Nari said quietly. "Based on our practice runs, we have about a 12% chance of success." 12%. Tay felt the weight of that number settle on his shoulders. Liray's voice came through the medical bay speakers. She was awake and had been listening. 12% is better than 0. Please, I want to try." Tay looked at his crew. "It's her choice. If she wants to take this risk, we'll do everything we can to make it work." "There's one more problem," Quan said. "The Keltharian ships. They're close. 6 hours away, maybe less. Then we do the procedure in 5 hours," Day decided. Ready or not, the crew scattered back to their preparations. Tay found himself alone in his workshop staring at the plasma cutter. His hands were shaking. Not from caffeine this time. From fear. He had been confident when he presented the plan. But now, with everything ready, the reality hit him. If he made one mistake, Liray would die, and it would be his fault. The door opened. Captain Day walked in and sat down beside him. "Having doubts?" the captain asked. "Yes." "Good. That means you understand what's at stake." Day was quiet for a moment. "You know what I used to do before I became a salvage captain?" Tay shook his head. "I was a combat medic, military. I've held a lot of dying people in my arms. And I learned something. The worst thing isn't failing to save someone. The worst thing is not trying at all. Because then you never know. You spend the rest of your life wondering if you could have made a difference." Tay stood up. "We're trying, Tay. That's more than most people would do. Whatever happens, we can live with that." After the captain left, Tay sat for a long time. Then he picked up the plasma cutter and went back to practicing. His hands were steadier now. 4 hours later, everything was ready. Liray lay on the medical bed, the nanites already injected and spreading through her system. Nari stood ready with the EMP device. Hana had positioned the ship near the pulsar, fighting against the turbulent radiation to keep them stable. Tay held the plasma cutter, his hands positioned just millimeters from the collar. "Everyone ready?" Dai asked. They all confirmed. "Liray?" The Valori looked at each of them. Despite her pain, despite her fear, she smiled. "Thank you, all of you, for seeing me, for caring." "We're going to get you out of this," Tay promised. "On my mark," Day said. 3, 2, 1. But at that moment, the ship shuddered. Alarms started blaring. Quan's voice came through the speakers, panicked. "The Keltharians! They found us. 3 ships dropping out of hyperspace." The timing was ruined. But they were out of time. The ship lurched violently to the left. Tay grabbed the edge of the medical bed to keep from falling. The plasma cutter in his other hand sparked dangerously close to Liray's neck. "Hana, report," Captain Day shouted. 3 Keltharian warships just appeared. Hana's voice came through the speakers, tight with concentration. "They're demanding we return their property and surrender." "Tell them to go to hell," Day replied. "And get us out of here." "Working on it." The ship shook again as weapons fire passed close by. Through the medical bay window, Tay could see the pulsar in the distance, a massive star that pulsed with deadly radiation. They were too close to it already. Any closer and the radiation would kill them all. "We can't do the procedure like this," Yuna said, watching her medical monitors flicker from the ship's movements. "The timing has to be exact. If the ship keeps moving, then we have to do it during the evasion," Tay said. "Hana, can you give us a stable moment? Just 3 seconds? Are you crazy?" Hana's voice crackled. We're under attack. I know. But Liray is dying right now. We're out of time. There was a pause. Then Hana laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Okay, I'll give you 3 seconds. But you only get one shot at this. Tell me when you're ready. Tay looked at the others. Yuna checked her monitors. The nanites were in position, forming a protective layer around Liray's nervous system, but they would not last long under the stress of the collar's poison. Nari held the EMP device, her knuckles white from gripping it so hard. The pulsar radiation is interfering with my readings. I can't guarantee the strength will be exactly right. We'll have to risk it, Tay said. He positioned the plasma cutter again, his hand trembling. Liray, close your eyes. This is going to hurt. Liray nodded, her face pale. I trust you. The ship spun suddenly, throwing everyone sideways. A Keltharian missile exploded somewhere behind them. Kwan's voice came through the speakers. 2 ships on our tail, one moving to cut us off. I need that stable moment, Tay called out. I'm trying. Hana shot back. They're not making it easy. Day grabbed a support rail as another explosion rocked the ship. Hana dived toward the pulsar. What? Captain, that's suicide. The Keltharians won't follow us that close. They value their lives too much. Dive toward the pulsar, then use the gravity to slingshot us around. That moment when we're in the turn, that's when the ship will be most stable. Hana was quiet for just a second. Then, you're insane. But it might work. Everyone hold on. The ship suddenly changed direction, diving toward the massive pulsing star. The radiation levels spiked immediately. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. Through the window, Tay could see the pulsar growing larger, its surface roiling with magnetic storms. Radiation levels critical, the ship's computer announced calmly. I know. Hana shouted at the computer. The Keltharian ships fired at them, but they were falling back, not willing to get too close to the pulsar. One missile came close, and its electronics fried from the radiation before it could explode. Beginning the turn, Hana said. Get ready. You'll have 3 seconds when we hit the apex. Starting in 5, 4. Tay focused on the collar. Everything else fell away. The alarms, the explosions, his fear. All that existed was the glowing red collar and the person wearing it. 3, 2. Yuna's finger hovered over the nanite activation button. Nari aimed the EMP device. Tay positioned the plasma cutter. 1, now. For a brief moment, everything was still. The ship hung in space, balanced perfectly between the pulsar's gravity and its own momentum. In that moment of perfect stability, 4 things happened at once. Yuna activated the nanites, sending a command that made them form a solid barrier around every neural pathway in Liray's body. Nari fired the EMP device and a pulse of electromagnetic energy washed over the collar. The pulsar's radiation amplified the pulse, making it stronger than Nari had calculated. And Tay activated the plasma cutter, the bright blue flame biting into the dark metal. The collar's red light flickered. Confused by multiple attacks at once, its computer tried to trigger the failsafes. But the EMP had disrupted its power. The radiation from the pulsar was interfering with its systems, and the plasma cutter was cutting through faster than it could respond. But something was wrong. Tay could feel it. The cut was not going smoothly. The metal was harder than he expected. He was going too slow. The ship started to move again as Hana pulled them out of the turn. The stable moment was ending. Tay, Yuna shouted. He could not stop, not now. Tay made a split-second decision. Instead of cutting slowly and carefully, he pushed harder. The plasma cutter burned hotter. His hand moved faster than it should have, faster than was safe. The collar sparked. Electricity arced across its surface. Liray screamed, her body going rigid as the fail-safes partially triggered. The smell of burning metal filled the medical bay. Then, with a crack like breaking glass, the collar split in 2. The pieces fell away from Liray's neck and clattered onto the medical bed. They lay there, smoking and dead. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Liray gasped, her back arching off the bed. Her eyes rolled back. Medical alarms shrieked as her vital signs went wild. She's crashing! Yuna pushed Tay aside and grabbed her medical equipment. The fail-safes triggered partially. The toxin surge is massive. I'm losing her. No, Tay said. No, we did it. We removed the collar. But her body is shutting down. Yuna worked frantically, injecting medications, adjusting equipment. The nanites are helping, but they can't keep up with this much damage. Her nervous system is frying. Leary's hand suddenly shot out and grabbed Yuna's wrist. Her eyes opened, wild and unfocused. "Worth it," she whispered. "Die free. Better than live, slave." Then her eyes closed and her hand went limp. "No." Yuna's hands flew over her equipment. Come on, come on. Don't you give up on me." The ship was still shaking from weapons fire, but everyone in the medical bay was focused on the monitors showing Liray's vital signs. They watched as the lines became erratic, jumping and falling. Yuna was talking to herself, or maybe to Liray, a constant stream of words. "You don't get to quit now. We did not go through all of this for you to die. The nanites are working. Your body is strong. You survived 12 years of slavery. You survived 3 days alone. You can survive this." The monitors kept screaming. Liray's heartbeat became irregular. Her breathing stopped. "Yuna," Day said gently. "No." Yuna grabbed a large syringe filled with a glowing blue liquid. "I'm not done." She injected it directly into Liray's chest. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Liray's body jerked, once, twice. Her chest heaved as she gasped for air. The monitors began to stabilize. Slowly, very slowly, the vital signs started to improve. "That's it," Yuna breathed. "Come on, that's it." Liray's eyes flickered open. They were confused, clouded with pain, but they were alive. "You're okay," Yuna told her. "You're going to be okay." Liray tried to speak but couldn't. She raised one shaking hand to her neck, feeling the place where the collar had been. Her fingers touched bare skin. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. "Hana," Day called out. "Status?" "The Keltharians are pulling back," Hana reported. "They don't want to risk getting closer to the pulsar. We're in the clear for now." Quan appeared in the doorway of the medical bay. He looked at the broken collar on the bed, then at Liray, then at the crew. A slow smile spread across his face. "We did it," he said, sounding amazed. "We actually did it." Tay looked at his hands. They were shaking worse than before. The plasma cutter fell from his grip, clattering to the floor. He suddenly felt exhausted, like all the energy had drained out of his body at once. Nari picked up one piece of the broken collar, examining it closely. This should not have worked. The timing was off. The EMP was too strong. The cut was too fast. By every calculation, this should have failed. But it didn't, Hana said from the doorway. She had put the ship on autopilot and come to see. It didn't fail because we didn't give up. Day looked at each of his crew members. "You all risked your lives today. For someone you barely knew. I'm proud of every one of you." Liray was trying to speak. Yuna adjusted something on the medical equipment and Liray's voice came through, weak but clear. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for giving me back my life." "Rest now," Yuna told her. "You have a lot of healing to do. But the worst is over." Liray nodded and closed her eyes. But this time her face was peaceful. The pain lines were already starting to fade. Tay picked up the broken pieces of the collar. They felt heavy in his hands. Heavy with the weight of 12 years of slavery. Heavy with the crimes they represented. "What do we do with this?" he asked. Nari took the pieces from him. "We study it, learn from it, and then we figure out how to free others." "Others?" Day asked. "Captain," Nari said quietly. "If there was one slave ship, there are more. If there was one collar, there are thousands, maybe millions." The implications hung in the air. The crew looked at each other, understanding what Nari was suggesting. "That's a big fight to pick," Quan said. But he was smiling. "Yeah," Hana agreed. "It is." Day looked at Liray sleeping peacefully, the first peace she had known in 12 years. Then he looked at his crew. "Well," he said, "I guess we better get started." 3 weeks had passed since the collar came off. Liray stood in the common area of the Wanderer's Hope, looking out at the stars through the main viewport. Her neck bore a pale scar where the collar had been, but it was healing well, better than anyone had expected. Behind her, she could hear the familiar sounds of the crew going about their daily routines. Hana was arguing with the navigation computer. Quan was cleaning his weapons. Nari was muttering to herself in the workshop. These sounds had become comforting to her. They meant safety. They meant family. "You're up early," Yuna said, walking in with 2 cups of tea. She handed one to Liray. "I wanted to see the sunrise," Liray said, then smiled. "Even though there is no sun here." Old habits. Yuna stood beside her and they drank their tea in comfortable silence. This too had become routine. The Valori and the human sharing quiet mornings together. "How are you feeling?" Yuna asked. It was a question she asked every day. Stronger, Lirai said. And it was true. The toxin damage was slowly being repaired by the nanites still in her system. She could walk without stumbling now. Her hands no longer shook. I think I will live. I never doubted it, Yuna said with a smile. The door opened and Captain Day walked in, carrying a data pad. His face was serious. We've arrived at New Geneva Station, he announced. Lyrae, the Colonial Council has agreed to meet with you. Lyrae felt her stomach twist with nervousness. New Geneva was the largest human colony in this sector. The Colonial Council governed dozens of worlds. They had the power to help, or to turn her away. You don't have to do this, Tay said, entering behind the captain. We can just leave. Find somewhere quiet where you can recover in peace. But Lyrae shook her head. No, I must do this. There are others still wearing collars, others still enslaved. If I can help them, I must try. Nari walked in carrying the broken collar pieces now sealed in a clear container. I've extracted all the data from the collar's memory. It's worse than we thought. She pulled up a holographic map. It showed the local sector of space with hundreds of red dots scattered across it. Each of these dots is a location stored in the collar's navigation data, Nari explained. Slave processing centers, auction houses, transport routes. The Keltharians have a massive operation running through this entire region. How many slaves? Talia asked quietly. Based on the data, millions, maybe tens of millions. Nari zoomed in on one cluster of dots. And it's not just Valori. There are dozens of species being trafficked. The room was silent as everyone absorbed this information. We can't fight the entire Keltharian Empire, Quan said. We're one small ship. We're not one ship, Leary said softly. Look, she pointed out the viewport. New Geneva Station was coming into view, a massive structure of metal and light hanging in space. But what caught everyone's attention were the other ships. Dozens of them. Human ships of all sizes gathering around the station. What is this? Hana asked. Day checked his data pad. News of what we did has spread. The story of a human crew breaking a Keltharian slave collar. Other salvage ships, merchants, even some military vessels. They're all coming here. 2 hours later, Lyrae stood in front of the Colonial Council. The chamber was large and intimidating, with the council members sitting in a half-circle above her. But she was not alone. Tay and the rest of the crew stood behind her. And in the gallery above, hundreds of people watched. Humans mostly, but also some other aliens who had heard the story and come to see. Lyrae spoke clearly, telling her story. 12 years of slavery. The damaged collar. The humans who had risked everything to save her. She showed them the broken collar, the data it contained. She showed them the maps of slave operations. The Keltharians believe they are untouchable, Lyrae said. They believe their technology cannot be defeated. But these humans proved them wrong. They broke the unbreakable collar. And if it can be done once, it can be done again. One of the council members, an older woman with gray hair, leaned forward. What you're suggesting would mean conflict with the Keltharian Empire. They have thousands of warships. We would be starting a war we cannot win. With respect, Counselor, Captain Day spoke up. We're not suggesting a war. We're suggesting we help people escape. Rescue missions. Underground networks, using human ingenuity to break their systems without direct military conflict. Another council member shook his head. The Keltharians would still see it as an act of war. Then let them, said a voice from the gallery. Everyone turned. A human man stood up. He wore the uniform of a merchant captain. My name is Wu Jin, he said, captain of the cargo vessel Star Dancer. I've seen Keltharian slave ships. I've seen the cages. I've seen children torn from their parents, and I've done nothing because I thought there was nothing I could do. He looked at Lyrae. But if she can survive 12 years of that, and still stand here asking us to help others, then I'm ashamed I ever stayed silent. Another voice spoke up, a woman this time. I'm Captain Soon of the salvage ship New Dawn. I'm with Wu Jin. Tell us how to break those collars and we'll do it. More voices joined in, more captains standing up, pledging their ships and crews. The council chamber filled with shouts of support. The gray-haired counselor raised her hand for silence. When the noise died down, she looked at Lyrae. You have stirred something in people, she said. Hope, perhaps. Or maybe just anger at injustice. Either way, the council cannot ignore it. She turned to her fellow members. We will provide support for voluntary rescue operations. Technical data, safe harbors, medical supplies. We cannot wage war, but we can help those who choose to fight slavery. The chamber erupted in cheers. Over the next few days, New Geneva Station became a center of activity. Nari taught other engineers how to break slave collars using the methods they had developed. Una trained medics in treating the effects of the toxins. Tay designed better EMP devices that could be mass-produced. And Lyrae found herself surrounded by freed slaves who had heard the news and come to the station. They came from different species, different worlds. But they all had the same look in their eyes. The same hope. One evening, Lyrae found Tay in the workshop. He was making adjustments to a new collar-breaking device. "You look tired," she said. "I am," Tay admitted, "but in a good way. We've taught the technique to 47 ships now. They're already planning their first rescue missions." Lyrae sat down beside him. "I never thanked you properly. For saving my life. You've thanked us plenty of times." "Not for saving my life," Lyrae said. "For seeing me as worthy of saving. So many people saw me, saw others like me, and looked away. But you looked and decided to act. That is the greatest gift you could have given me." Tay was quiet for a moment. "You know what the hardest part was? Not the timing or the technology. It was deciding to try in the first place. Because trying meant accepting responsibility. If we failed, your death would have been our fault. It's easier to just walk away and tell yourself there was nothing you could do. But you did not walk away," Lyrae said. "No," Tay agreed. "We didn't." A soft alarm chimed. Tay checked his tablet and smiled. First rescue mission just reported success. They freed 12 Valori from a transport ship near the border. Lyrae felt tears in her eyes. 12 more free. "It's just a start," Tay said, "but it's something." The next morning, the crew of the Wanderer's Hope prepared to depart. They had received a distress signal. Another ship. Another impossible caller. But now they were not alone in answering these calls. Lyrae stood on the bridge wearing a simple gray jumpsuit that marked her as a crew member. Una had insisted she was not ready for active duty yet, but Lyrae had insisted just as strongly that she would not stay behind. "Ready?" Captain Day asked from his chair. The crew called out their confirmations. Hana's hands moved over the controls. Quan checked weapon systems. Nari monitored the sensors. Una prepared the medical bay. Tay loaded the collar-breaking equipment, and Lyrae stood at the communications station, ready to use her empathic abilities to help identify the people who needed them most. "Let's go save some lives," Day said. The ship pulled away from New Geneva Station. Behind them, dozens of other ships followed. Some were there to help with the rescue. Others were heading to different locations, different missions, but all of them had the same goal. As they entered hyperspace, Lyrae looked around at her crew, her family, these humans who had shown her what kindness looked like, what courage looked like, what hope looked like. "What are you thinking?" Una asked, noticing Lyrae's expression. Lyrae touched the scar on her neck, then smiled. "I am thinking that the Keltharians made a mistake. They thought the collars made us weak, controllable, but they forgot something important." "What's that?" "They forgot that even in our darkest moments we remember what freedom feels like. And once you remember, once you know it is possible, nothing can stop you from reaching for it again." She looked at the stars rushing past. "And now, thanks to all of you, we have help. We have humans who refuse to look away from injustice, who solve impossible problems just by trying." Hana glanced back from the pilot's seat and grinned. "You make it sound noble. Really, we're just stubborn." "Perhaps stubbornness and nobility are not so different," Lyrae said. The ship flew on through hyperspace, following the distress signal. Behind them, more ships followed. And behind those, even more were preparing to launch.